Hey there. So here's the new project updates. So I've been working on repairing veneer on the outer cabinets. The cabinets are my next step since now I have a concept for how the internals are going to work. And I know I said before that I was going to have to re-veneer both sides, but I'm pretty sure that all the pieces of veneer were on this side here. So I have those glued in place. I'm going to take these off in a few minutes and see how that worked out. A little bit, there's a few pieces up here that need to be glued, but mostly on this piece I've just been scraping off the finish with like a carbide scraper, which works really well to take finish off, and then a really light hand sanding because this veneer, it's thin. Not like thinner than a sheet of paper. So that's true for that side. Now this other side is a lot worse. This other side, I'm still pretty sure I'm going to have to completely re-veneer it. Where not only is all that buckled, but we're actually missing quite a bit of veneer down there at the bottom. I just don't think I could make that look decent without replacing that entire side. I know some people will scab a piece on and all that, but it's just not that much veneer, and I don't know. I can't imagine why I just wouldn't do that. There's still a lot of work to be done, especially sanding those legs and the appliques and things like that to get all the old finish off of them so I can redo those finishes. And I'd originally thought I'd take this thing apart, but it turns out that I'm afraid I would destroy too much of it if I decided to do that. Let's see if I can show you why. Well, I'm not going to try to turn that over. I've got so much stuff on it that I'm afraid I would just do more damage. Let's see here, maybe. Okay, pause buttons are wonderful. So whereas the shelves are dated into the legs here, they're just glued, blocked on the side, but they've driven nails. I don't know if you can see the head of that nail. And if you look down through here, you can almost see where it comes through. So there are diagonal nails in all four corners of these things, and they're pretty good sized nail. So to disassemble this thing completely and lay it out like I wanted to do, I would have to try to cut through those diagonal nails, pull them out, all that stuff without ruining this old plywood box. So I'm just not going to do it. I'm just going to try to fix it up exactly the way it is. So the update on the Phillips one, I decided since I was doing that one, I would go ahead and start working on this one as well. So I've already been gluing down a lot of the top, glued down these pieces. I still got to do some sanding finish work, but it's glued, and some more veneer gluing down in the center there. Started scraping off the finish off the sides. That's just scraped. There's no sanding involved, and you can really see the difference. And that's going to be pretty walnut, I think, when I'm done and it's finished back up. The last thing to glue on this will be, not sure if you can tell on the camera, but there's, more than a 1/16, maybe 3/32 gap right here at the top. And I think that it's not just wood shrinkage. I think it's coming apart, but it's a little bit hard to tell. This other side doesn't have that. So I might have to glue that back together. If it's wood shrinkage, I'll have to figure something else out. So update on some of the other projects. Well, tell you what, same project. This is the amplifier I bought. This is a Pioneer SX 255. That's what I'm going to use the amp out of and the power supply. Once I test it and go through it and refurbish it and make sure it sounds good and functions like it's supposed to. But my workbench area here, it's just a little bit on the small side for all that, and I'm starting to have problems with meters and trying not to knock stuff off the back, so I'm actually extending that. So I've made a shelf right here, and I'm going to make some brackets that go on the very back side of my workbench to hold this up. So the entire assembly will come out, whatever that is, 8 inches or so, and give me another 8 inches of bench, and then a backsplash there so I don't knock stuff off the back, just with some materials that I had around here. 6 minutes later, clamps are off. Everything looks pretty good. You can see where I scraped the finish down. I need to do a little bit of hand sanding on there. to even some stuff out, and it's going to require some toner or something just to even things out. But the veneer itself, you can see a couple of areas, where the scratches went through. But once I put some finish on that, I might have to fill it with a little wax or something. I think it'll go away. I don't think it'll be noticeable at all. The top, the same thing. Those two big gouges that you see right there, they actually don't go through the veneer, but I just now carelessly did that while scraping that stuff away. I get a little impatient sometimes. The inside is the same way, and I haven't scraped anything on the inside, but it was all buckled off as well. So that's that. Quick update as I move along. I pulled the clamps off that other side, the side that I was able to glue up, and it mostly looked pretty well. It mostly looked perfect. There was one little piece at the bottom that I didn't have enough glue in, so I'm having to re-glue the bottom. And I got some new veneer on this side over here. So I don't know how well it shows up in the camera. I mean, this is all walnut, but all three sides are slightly different color. So you can see that side, and don't pay attention to the legs; they're a different material. And then the front is this, I don't know, lighter brown with, of course, the burl. It's book matched pieces split right up the middle. So you've got that burl on top, and then those little decorative bell-shaped pieces. Those are also walnut burl. It doesn't look that great right now with no finish on it, but I think it'll look really nice once I get it smooth and finished. But now look at the color on this other side, the first side that I was showing you. This was even a darker brown, and all the finish has been scraped off and then lightly hand sanded. So this is what color the wood is, which makes me want to think, do I want to re-veneer this side? I'd just go over the top of this veneer to match the other, or do I put maybe a light brown stain over the entire thing to try to make it all look like one color? Or maybe just tone this side a little bit browner, because it's almost got in the camera it kind of looks purplish. In real life, I don't know. I'm not really very good with colors, to be honest with you. But perhaps just make that one browner and kind of leave these the way they are. I don't know. But that's my update. That's where we're at. Mostly glued down. Most of the stuff has been stripped off. Quite a bit more sanding to do around the edges. All the legs have to be sanded. I still have to make that stretcher. This applique center part is screwed on. I'm not sure if I want to take it off or not, because I don't want to risk damaging something. It's so old that so much of it falls apart when you start prying on things. I may give it a shot. I don't know. It's probably not that big a deal. I'm mostly just thinking about sanding the routed edges, of that centerpiece right there. So I decided I just couldn't live with this old veneer on this side. It looks so different than the new veneer on the other side. The color is way off, but even more importantly, the pattern is completely different. It doesn't have those nice arches and things like the new veneer does. However, there was a couple of holes on this side from some switches, and what I had was some 3/4 inch dowels. Those were some oddball holes. So I made this little guide, used what's called a Forstner bit to drill out those holes, and then made some little pucks out of a 3/4 dowel. I'm going to glue those in. I'm going to rough this stuff up, and then this is how the veneer comes. So you can see the totally different pattern and color. I'm going to go ahead and cut a new piece of veneer and glue that on. And the glue that I'm using, which is this pretty interesting heat lock glue. So it's almost like a contact adhesive. You paint it on both sides and you let it dry. Then you put them together, and then you use an iron on a hot setting with a cloth on it so you don't burn anything. And then the heat is what sets that glue. So you iron it on there, and you don't have to try to clamp up some big panel like that you have a really difficult time getting to the other side of it. So, I like using that stuff. Next day, and veneer applied. So now we have both sides with the exact same veneer, pattern, color, and all that. The front is a little different, but there is no way I'm changing that. Gorgeous front. And I think once I get finish on it, the colors will all match. I have used the same veneer on my computer, and I mean, it's brown. It just looks odd in this video for whatever reason. Now let me show you what I'm doing with this Phillips one. So I've done a lot of gluing on the top, and I mentioned before there's this gap where the thing is coming apart right there. I don't know if you could relate. So what I did is I put a pipe clamp on it to kind of see if it would move, and it does. What I want to show is how poorly these things are constructed. I mean, it is really not exactly a work of excellent craftsmanship inside. I mean, the wood is, it's not good. So what do I do to hold it together? Certainly, wood glue is not going to do it. Let me see if I can show you the movement of this. Wood glue is not going to do it. But my plan is perhaps on the inside, put a bead of silicone and then mix up some epoxy, put some brown tint in the epoxy, kind of fill that void with some epoxy, and the silicone is just as a dam to keep it from going down anywhere. And once I do that, I'll address that crack across the front. Maybe I have to fill in some of it with some hard wax sticks or something like that to try to make it look decent. That's what I'm thinking I'm going to do. It looks like it's going to work. I might even, because I've had to put so much pressure on it with that pipe clamp, I left it clamped overnight last night, which has already relieved some of the stress of when I originally squeezed it together. But I'm thinking I might go over it with a hot air gun or something in a little while, just to kind of help relieve some tension in some of the fibers, and maybe it won't be trying to pull apart so badly. Like I said, it's already better after just one night with that clamp, but there's still gaps. Well, I did it, and we'll see how that goes. I leave tomorrow for 4 days for work, so I'm just going to leave it all clamped up like this for a week and unclamp it. We'll see what it looks like. I'm at the point of diminishing returns on this, where it seems like every hour of sanding or prep work I spend on it makes it maybe 1% better. So I think it's going to be how it is. I'm about to put color on it soon. Just want to give you a quick look at it before I do that. New veneer on both sides. I did end up taking all the pieces off the front except for those little thin pieces of burl. I ended up putting some color on the, I don't know what you call the arch work through the middle of it as well, to darken that stuff up. I did determine that the legs, I believe that the legs are poplar. I'm 90% sure they're poplar. Just old poplar turns brown. It's green when it's fresh. Fortunately, I had some really old poplar. I needed to make that stretcher, and it was pretty brown, but by the time I ran it through the planer and sanded it and made that stretcher, it kind of greened up a little bit. But that's okay, because I plan on putting some dark brown color on the legs and stretcher anyways. And I'm actually considering just going over the entire thing to even out the color with the same dark brown dye stain that I've got. I put it on a couple little swatches of the veneer to let it dry and see what it looks like. I can hold it up against it. It's hard to tell. I mean, this is not something that I do very often. Glued together the top piece, gosh, with all the sanding and prep work and everything like that. So I'm going to put the dark brown stain around the perimeter of this. There will be, I have to make a new plywood top for it and veneer that. So that's what's missing from there. Here's the front piece application that was actually screwed on and had a couple of nails. You can see some areas where I used a stain pen in the bottom to color in some areas that the veneer was just gone. It was worn through. But once I once I get some paint thinner on that, you can't even see it. It's the same color. So I think I can just put some clear finish on that. Once I put some color around the poplar perimeter of it, should hopefully all blend in and not really be very noticeable. The other pieces of it over here, just all the sanding prep work. I glued together this little scroll thing, made the little leaf. It still needs to be carved so that it looks like it was supposed to be there. Then I'll have to darken it up, try to make it look like the rest of it. So next time you see it, it should have some color on it. Got the new top made. Got it all clamped up overnight. Let's see what it looks like on there. There's still no finish on it. Just a little bit of color, a little bit of wood dye to even everything out. Next step, we'll put some finish on it. So there's the finished cabinet. Not too bad. Overall, I'm pretty happy with it. It looks okay from 5 feet away. It looks pretty good. You get up too close, you can start seeing things I wish I might have done differently. One thing that I did that was untraditional in building this, non-traditional, is I used a water-based poly for a finish. A couple reasons. One is I've had a lot of good luck with that stuff before. It looks great, dries fast, easy cleanup. You can put some tint in it, and make the finish look richer, which is what I did here. The downside, which I didn't consider, is because I already had some tint on the wood. When you start painting on that water-based poly, it starts picking up some of the tint from the wood, which didn't end up being a big deal, but the stuff would foam. So because I'm using a brush and I brushed it across all this detail work, mainly on the front here, it would cause foaming to cut in all the little tiny corners and cracks and crevices and in those little tiny arches and the sides and all that stuff. And once it dried, I spent hours just about digging that stuff out with a little pocket knife and a V-gouge and stuff like that. So, and then in the legs, I ended up getting an artist brush because you've got on those little fluted columns, I guess you'd call it, man, all the foam would build up inside those little flutes, and I spent so much time on that. So subsequent coats, I used a little artist brush, and that helped. And like I said, it turned out okay. I just spent a lot more time putting that stuff on than I thought I would need to. Ideally, probably would have been a spray-on lacquer. It just would have been a lot more expensive, and I already owned the poly and just didn't anticipate those problems. Overall, pretty happy with it. I ended up partially buffing that little bezel, that Airline bezel near the top. It's copper. It kind of has a brassy look to it, but if you like the back side of it, you can tell it's actually copper. It's weird. My plan for that is that to build an LED VU meter that'll go back and forth across there, I'd like to have some sort of a translucent, one of those red transparency sheets or something as a diffuser, because I don't want to see individual lights. I just want to see the red light, go back and forth across there. That's going to require some experimentation. I just haven't gotten to that point yet. And then I've got to build a frame, and I'm going to put some cloth, nothing like original, but I've got some red, I don't know, to me it looks like a Victorian style cool red cloth that I used on my computer for that speaker grill in the front. And it's not going to have a speaker in it because, it's going to be stereo and not one big mono speaker. But that's the cabinet. Next for this project, I'm going to start working on the amplifier, more electronics, trying to get that Pi-Core radio, which I've got running. I work it in the house now on my 1950s radio that I updated, so I can listen to it every day in there just to test it out. Now I've got to get that Pioneer amplifier going and refurbed and make all that stuff work together, make that VU meter. I don't know. So next part of this video series will be electronics. Something else that I've been working on over here is, and you might have seen this in the background some, but this is a canopy for my large aquarium to go on top of it. So it's going to take it nearly to the ceiling. And I've been putting some black polyamide 2-part epoxy coating on this stuff, and I'm mixing up a little bit more of it right now, so I have that fan on in the background. I did not think about turning that off before recording this. The canopy is also upside down, so what you're looking at the bottom where it's not painted is actually the top, and there's a shelf there. So when this thing is flipped over, and I made it in so many pieces so that I could carry it in and install it myself, since it's all 3/4 inch plywood, 12 feet long, it's amazingly heavy and awkward. So there will be a screen on top of that, and the lighting will go in that area. You can't tell how deep it is, but it's about 7 inches, I guess, of unpainted area, which I will paint black, just probably not with epoxy. There will also be some ventilation fans, and maybe the sprinkler system will come, misting system, I should say, will come down through there, and a few things like that. But I'll show that once it's all done and installed, not trying to do individual videos on that thing. Talk to you later.